What's up guys, welcome back. In this video we're going to take a look at how to achieve this sick, realistic rust effect, which is both highly effective and simple to do. If you want to see how I built and painted the rest of this base, a very detailed video showing the whole process can be found on my Patreon feed. You'll need to start off with zenithal priming, which sounds fancy, but all you do is spray the model with a black primer. Then once that's dried you spray again, but this time with white, spraying from above at about a 60-degree angle, turning the model round between sprays so that you get a good coating from all sides. That gives you this natural texturing on the surface, which makes a great starting point. All we really need to do is add some colour to bring it to life. With that in mind, we'll take a bit of this secret weapon Old Rust and thin it down slightly with some water, making a heavyish glaze consistency. You don't have to use this specific paint, any dull purple is going to work just fine. And we'll use that to colour the oil drum, using it much like a wash, but we won't allow it to pull heavily on the surface. All we're trying to do is give it that purple tint, retaining some of that grain from the primer. And once that's dry, we'll apply another layer, and that will make the colour a lot stronger. We're going to be painting this with a heavy corrosion effect, and when you're painting rust, like in a lot of things, it's important to have some variation to the colour, so it's not just going to be orange. You're going to have a mix of different tones in there, and that will give you a more realistic effect. So next we're going to use another secret weapon colour, this time red rust, but this time we're not going to thin it down. Instead we're going to take a bit of ripped sponge and dip it straight into the paint. Now when you're doing this you're always going to have way too much paint on there, so before you apply it to the model, just tap it against a paper towel a few times to get the bulk of the paint off. It's the same idea as when you're doing dry brushing. Next, it's just a case of gently tapping the sponge against the oil drum. Keep pressing it onto the surface, trying to get a nice coverage over the whole drum. If you can't access some parts of it, you can shift to a smaller piece of sponge, although if you do that I'd recommend using a pair of tweezers to hold it. It just makes it a bit easier to get it where you want it. You can see it's actually starting to look pretty good just with those two colours on there. Once you're happy with the coverage, you can introduce a new colour, and this time we'll use Secret Weapon Orange Rust. It's a slightly dull orange, a lot like Scrag Brown from the Games Workshop range, but it has a slightly different finish. Again, we're going to dip a sponge directly into it and then take most of the paint off by tapping it against a paper towel until it's only leaving behind a speckled pattern. And we'll apply that to the oil drum just like we did in the last step, but this time we'll be more conscious of trying to retain both of those colours from the last two layers so that we don't end up just covering everything up with the orange. Alright, so I'm going to switch back to the brush to add a few more controlled details, and I'm essentially stippling here, applying little dots of paint just in any areas where I feel we need a bit more colour. If you like, you can switch back to your darker red rust colour and apply a few more sponge marks in spots where you think you've covered up too much with the orange. Alright, so now that we've built up a pretty decent rust effect, we can add some additional detail by adding a worn paint effect on top. For that, I'm going to mix up a dirty blue-green colour by adding some of the orange rust into some scale colour Caspian blue. And just like before, we're going to dip a bit of a ripped sponge into it, taking most of it off on a paper towel, applying it to the oil drum by gently pressing the sponge against the surface. So this is going to represent little bits of paint left on the surface that have survived the years of corrosion. It's up to you how much paint you want there. You could just have a few spots or go all out and end up with only a few patches of the rust showing. Once I finished that, I painted some of the orange rust into the recesses of those little raised details, just to help get them to stand out a bit, but also to simulate the rust collecting there over time. As a finishing touch, you can just sponge a little bit of the orange rust over the top. And yeah, I think that looks pretty good. I'm quite happy with it. If you're interested in seeing more videos like this one, hit subscribe so you don't miss an upload. Let me know what you thought in the comments down below, and I'll see you all in the next video.